Welcome to Right Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 205, Co-Writing the End of a Series, an interview with Melissa Kosci, coming to you on Thursday, July 16th, 2020. Hello, everybody. How are you? How's your July going? I hope that you are staying warm or staying cool, depending on where you live. And I especially hope that you're finding yourself getting a lot of writing done. I have to say, this whole writing sprint thing that I've been talking to you on and off about for the last several months is just, I know that it works. That's why I do it. But just recently, I happen to have found some people who want to do it every single day. Recently, meaning since pretty much the beginning of the lockdown period. So there's 4 of us who meet almost every single weekday. And then I've got a few more people that I'm meeting with twice a week in the evenings. And for a half an hour at a time, when you're just thinking to yourself, this is my half hour, I've got to get as many words done as I can. It is a little shocking still after years of doing it, how much you can get done if you're just focused for just 20 or 30 minutes. So for instance, today I was thrilled. I knew exactly what I was writing today, and I wrote 674 words in 30 minutes. That is very good for me. I'm very happy. With fiction, I can do a little bit more with nonfiction. So I was having a very happy day today. Yesterday, I was like, it's okay. It was 300 and something, not a ton. It might have been 392, which is almost 400. But anyway, it wasn't a ton. And there was probably the first 5 or 10 minutes that I had 60 words and a blinking cursor. But I just kept looking at the clock going, come on, Kitty, 19 minutes left, 18 minutes left, looking at the clock. Just think of something. And sometimes just forcing yourself to write something. Sometimes I write things that I'm like, that's probably not actually going to end up in the book. But a lot of times I'm like, well, actually, this needs to be edited, but this is actually kind of something good. So if you haven't been doing it, I encourage you, again, try those writing sprints. And definitely when you do it with somebody else, it really helps you focus because you know that you're going to tell somebody in 30 minutes, this is how many words that I wrote. How many words did you write? So now, with more writing topic stuff, I wanted to remind you that we have one more free webinar coming up on Saturday, July 18th. And this is to give you more information about a one-day virtual writers conference that my friend Jennifer Dornbush and I are doing called Writing with Hollywood in Mind. So the webinar is going to give you some kind of overviews and ideas about what we're going to do in the all-day conference. In the all-day conference, which will be the following Saturday, July 25th, again, called Writing with Hollywood in Mind. It'll be Jennifer and I and Jennifer's agent, Julie Gwynn from the Seymour Agency. So I'll be talking about the techniques that TV and movie writers use that you can put in your novel to make your novel much more of a page turner, more visually interesting, make people think, wow, it was like watching a movie, even though I was reading a book. Jennifer is going to be talking about how to write a screenplay that really gets people's attention and that makes people in Hollywood take notice. We'll also both be talking about the ways that you can make your book be more movie-like for people who are reading books in Hollywood looking for something that they can make that's based on a book. And then Agent Julie Gwynn will be talking about pitching, how to pitch your book, how to pick, how the process works for going from book to trying to get it optioned as a screenplay, trying to sell the movie rights, that sort of thing. And I believe that she will also be taking pitches. I'm not sure it's pitching practice or like pitch to Julie, but I will put more information on the website when I hear back from her and give you more detailed information. You can register for the free webinar and you can register for the conference at the same webpage, which is rightnowworkshop.com/July 25. rightnowworkshop.com/JULY25. And both, one side is the webinar and one side is the conference. You can see pretty clearly what you're looking at there. Also, if you come to the webinar, we give you a coupon code that you can use for signing up for the conference and get another $20 off. I'll keep on putting more information there about everything that's going on at the conference and times. It starts at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on July 25th. And the webinar is Saturday starting at 8:30 Pacific in the morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. So all the information again is at rightnowworkshop.com/July 25. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is I am almost halfway through my Finish Your Book intensive coaching program. And I've got 3 clients that I'm so happy for them. They're doing exceptionally well. Everybody is writing hard, writing fast, getting a lot of work done, and we're having a great time working together. I'm so excited. I think one person is actually going to finish their book before the program ends. Yay! And then the other 2 people have other goals that are like to almost finish and to get partway. One person's starting their book at the beginning of the program rather than coming in with something that they need to finish. So it's been super exciting, really fun. I love helping people get things going and get a lot more done. Remember what I was saying about when I sprint with other people, I get more done and I show up and do it more often. The more often I know other people are going to be there. And that's part of what's happening with this Finish Your Book intensive coaching program. There's one-on-one coaching and group coaching. But the fact is that we're getting together, at least 4 times a week. And every other week when I meet with them individually, then that's a 5th time that everybody is meeting with me and or the group. And it's just getting people motivated and excited and inspired and pushing them. And it's been a great time. If you're interested in something like this, let me know. I have a page that, again, I will keep on updating and putting more and fresher information on it called rightnowworkshop.com/writing coach. And that's where I am explaining a little bit more about this Finish Your Book intensive coaching program. It may not be for everyone. It's not cheap, but it certainly gets the job done, which is part of the point. So, and it's because it's not for everyone. It's not necessarily the kind of program at this point that I'm having people just like sign up and pay and you're in. Pretty much we need to have a phone call and make sure that you're in a place so that I can help you, because it would be silly for you to sign up and pay and then I can't help you as much as you and I both wanted me to be able to. So for that program, you sign up to get a call with me and we'll just talk. We'll talk about what you're doing, what your goals are, and whether or not I can help. So that would be very exciting. I will be opening up a new program somewhere around the middle to end of September of this year, 2020. So I'll start interviewing, that's kind of a weird way to say it, isn't it? But having Zoom calls with people over the next few weeks. And the class always will have a maximum of 10 people in it. That way everybody's getting a lot of really good personal close attention. So I just wanted to let you know more about that. A reminder that we're still on summer schedule for several more weeks. So the next episode of the podcast will come out in 2 weeks rather than next week. And that leads us into the interview. So Melissa Kosci and I actually spoke in April about her new book, which at the time wasn't out, and now it's been out for a month. I am so excited about this book, and I will not say anything more so you can just hear about it in the interview. But if you like suspense, supernatural suspense even, I'm just going to stop. You have to listen because I think this is a great series. And Melissa is talking to us about how she helped she co-wrote the 3rd book in the series, which is really interesting. So the original author wrote book 1 and 2, started book 3, and then worked with her, and Melissa finished out book 3. It's a really interesting story, and it's not the kind of co-writing that I had ever really thought about before, helping out when somebody just can't get this book done right now. So I think you're going to find it really interesting. I also mentioned that we talked in April, just in case you're like, where are they? When are they? Because they're talking about it being cold or not very warm. And right this minute, it's super hot where I am. So yes, we did record this in April, not July. All right. So, with that said, here is Melissa. Today's guest is Melissa Kosci. Melissa is a fourth-degree black belt and certified instructor of Sangam Taekwondo. In her day job as a commercial property manager, she secretly notes personal quirks and funny situations, ready to tweak them into colorful additions for her books. She and Corey, her husband of 20 years, live in Florida, where they do their best not to melt in the sun. Welcome, Melissa.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. You and I both are in a sunny place on a sunny day today. That's always a blessing.
Yeah.
So is Florida already hot? Let's see. It's
It's like 70s, 80s, sometimes in the 90s right now. Florida is crazy. It's just it will have like 20-degree differences every day. So
yeah.
until you hit summertime.
Right. And
then it's just hot.
Okay.
Then you just melt.
Yeah. So you and I are talking just a few days before the Easter holiday, and it's already 70s, 80s, 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. Well, I see you've got a fan for anybody who's watching on YouTube. That's probably normal Florida housing.
Every
right?
single room has a fan. Yes.
Wow. Right. Okay. Well, I have to say, I'm pretty happy to be in Sweden. I'm much more comfortable with 55 degrees and do I or don't I need a hoodie rather than 90 and how will I live through this?
Oh, I completely agree. I grew up in Ohio, so that's more what I'm used to.
How funny. Ohio girl, Michigan girl.
Uh-huh.
Nice. All right. I'm not one of those people, though, who has any competitive streak with Michigan and I can't even remember which one it is. Ohio State and U of M or Michigan State. I can't even remember.
I don't know. I don't pay attention to sports at all.
I'm so glad to talk to somebody who cares as much as I do about that. Oh, man. Well, good thing we're not talking about sports. We're talking about books. Woo! And by the time this episode airs, your book isn't out at the time you and I are talking, but by the time it airs, it will have just come out. So yay, congratulations on your new release.
I'm excited.
Yay. So tell us the name of the book and a little bit about it, and then we'll just start talking about your whole process of how you got there.
So it's called A Dream Within a Dream. It's the third book in the series. It's the Coffey Hill series. So basically, we have to discover if this person who's called Dream, if he's really a cold-blooded killer or an innocent.
Wow.
So when we have the same characters as in Trudy and Samuel and a couple others that are, the same from the first two books. So you still get to have fun with Trudy. It's one of my favorite characters. You actually get to know Samuel a little bit better, I think, in this book, which is fun. And then they have to discover if Dream is a killer or not.
Nice. Oh, that sounds fun. So pretty much suspense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So now I'm going to tell you the thing that I was like, I got to tell you something, but I'm going to tell you on the show. So I'm reading the press release, I'm getting things ready. I've got the advanced reader copy, I read the prologue and then I had to do something else. And then I opened it up and now it's on chapter 1. And I'm like, wait, why do these character names seem familiar? So keeping in mind, I don't have the book. I have an advanced reader copy, which doesn't have, back cover copy on it or anything. And somehow I just never caught on to the fact that here it goes. Oh my gosh, I read book 1 2.5 years ago and told like hundreds of people how freaking awesome it was. When I found out this was book 3, I read like the first 2 pages of chapter 1 and then I'm like, I can't do it. I didn't know when, you read book 1 of a series and then you just sort of forget and you don't really know when book 2 will come out. Mm-hmm. I really thought that I read this book probably last year, but no, my Amazon receipt says that I bought it 2.5 years ago. So I'm reading the first couple of pages going, I can't do it. I can talk about this book, but I can't read this book because I haven't read book 2. So now I'm like, I am buying book 2 and then I can read and talk about book 3.
You have to read book 2. It's a good one. Wait. Mike wrote such an interesting character in book 2, the Raven. Yeah. It's awesome.
Okay, so if anybody is like, wait, okay, tell me more. So book 1 is called Annabel Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Book 2 is called The Raven.
Right.
And book 3, A Dream Within a Dream.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are listening going, wait a minute, that sounds kind of familiar, go ahead.
Edgar Allen Poe. Yeah, it's all based on Edgar Allen Poe.
Which is
books
so
or stories or
yeah. Now, so Mike is the co-author of book 3, and
Mm-hmm.
he's the author of book 1 and 2.
Correct.
Okay, so the Edgar Allan Poe thing is his idea.
Yes.
Okay, so do you know much about like how he got started on having this Edgar
From what I
Allan?
understand, he's just always loved Edgar Allan Poe and just kind of been obsessed with it since he was a kid. So he just kind of wove it into the stories, and it's really interesting how he weaved it in.
Sweet. Oh man, yeah, I loved Annabel Lee. I mean, it caught me just on the title of the book. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, okay, I'm totally reading the back cover copy on this. And then it was such a weird, cool, weird idea / setup that I had to buy it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading it going, what? Like all the time I was going, what? And it made me read it pretty quickly. I mean, I don't know how long it took. It was 2.5 years ago, but I remember just like having to sit down and read chapters at a time, not like a couple pages. I was like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I need longer amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that book because obviously I read those 2 books before I decided to take this one on, and it would kind of amaze me how well he, with the Annabel Lee when she's, we won't say much, but she's
Yeah.
trapped for a while and we keep going back to her, and you would think that would be boring, but I found it super interesting, and I
Yeah.
love the mute character. He's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, people, you have to go back and, and read all 3 of these books. So speaking of going back, Melissa, let's just go back just a little bit. Tell us about, I always like to ask people, like, how did you start writing? Have you always been a storyteller? How did you get involved in actually writing and publishing books? Just tell us about yourself.
So actually I have 0 writing talent. I was one of those kids that I did well in school, but I flunked my 9th grade writing proficiency. That's how not talented I am. But, and people are going to really want to read my books now.
Yeah.
But there was at one point, and I had an idea, and it just wouldn't leave my head. And I saw an interview with some other author doing something, and she said that, how she developed her idea, and it reminded me so much of me. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try writing it down. And I grabbed a notebook, some random notebook I had in the house, and I started writing, and I just like wrote for hours. No idea what I was doing. Just wrote for hours. And then from then on, I swear I've written almost every single day since that day. And I've
Wow.
read, books on writing and just educated myself and gotten to a point where Mike Nappa thinks I'm good enough. So, hey, must be pretty decent.
Nice. Oh my gosh. So is this like a tip that you can share with the audience, or is it like too long and complicated to explain, or?
What do you mean?
Well, you said that you learned something or read something that made you say, I'm going to try that.
Um, it was just an author interview, and her story just reminded me so much of me, how she came up with the idea and how it wouldn't leave her head, and she just, I had this idea, and I have to write it down.
Nice. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So were you still a teenager, or were you a little older by then?
I was a little older. It was in 2009.
Okay.
So.
I was going to say not that long ago, and I'm like, okay,
Mm-mm.
it's 2020. We've already gotten 10 years down the line. It's funny, you get dates in your head and you're like, that wasn't too long ago, and then you're like, well, minus 2020, yeah, that was.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah.
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 Okay, so I'm trying to figure out like where I want to go with this, because you told me some other things before we started, and I don't want that to be the focus of the interview. So you were writing. We'll come back to this part. You actually published books under another pen name also.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you get together with Mike? Because I want to move into the co-writing, and how did that come about, and how does it work?
Mike was my agent for a while. So he represented me for Fight Princess, another book that I have out. And then we parted ways after a while, and then he came back and he needed somebody to help him finish this book for personal reasons. And yeah, I guess he liked my writing, and our writing styles are fairly similar in a lot of ways. So I read the previous 2 books and decided, okay, let's give it a shot. It's a good opportunity.
Nice. Okay. So if people are listening, yes, personal connections definitely make a difference, but it sounds like networking and keeping track of who you've met in the past, like
Mm-hmm.
not severing connections, just knowing that
Mm-hmm.
there are people that you've met out there that, hey, maybe I should get a hold of so and so for this or that.
And just keep relationships positive at all times.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a good plan always, but definitely with businesses where networking is a big part of it. So.
Yeah.
So you guys had this conversation, you read the books, you thought, yeah, I want to do it. I would really like you to tell us with as much detail as you're willing. Tell us about co-writing. It sounds semi-terrifying to me because I'm like,
it did to me too.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us, what were you thinking, and then how did it start working?
Well, when he
And
first
also,
came
what
to
didn't
me,
work?
yeah, when he first came to me about it, it was like my first reaction was, I don't know. I'm used to, me being the domain, it's my book.
Yes.
What I say goes until the publisher gets involved. But, in the writing process, it's mine.
Yeah.
So it was a little terrifying, honestly, at first. But the way we worked it out is he had already written 20,000 words. So the first several chapters, that's all Mike with me editing a little bit, but pretty much all Mike. And then, so I read the first 2 books so I could get to know the characters, and read what he had written already so I could start to get an idea. And then we had a Skype call where he just gave me the lowdown on everything that he was thinking, because he had stopped writing it quite a while ago for a very massive personal reason. He lost somebody very close to him, and so he just couldn't get himself to jump back into it. And I understand, because you're probably mentally linked the book and the event, I'm thinking, probably.
Yeah, that happened to me when my husband was in a motorcycle accident while I was at a writer's retreat writing book 2 of a series that hasn't come out yet because they got too linked together in my head.
Yeah, exactly. So we went through everything. He told me everything that he remembered that he wanted to do with it. I took copious notes, digested it, came up with a basic plot line, outline, and then I wrote 3 more chapters, and he looked at it, tweaked it a little bit just to make sure that the characters fit his vision, because they are his characters in this.
Yeah.
So that's a little different. And then once he felt like I kind of had the voice right and the characters right, then basically he was just like, okay, go. Wow. So that was kind of nice. So like we worked together a lot at the beginning. There's a lot of collaboration to make sure that we understood each other. Luckily, he trusts me a lot. So he knows, I'm going to have decent writing skills. So he trusted that part. He just wanted to make sure the character voices were there. And he had the basic outline. And once we were in agreement on all that, I just went.
Wow. So I've heard, I haven't gotten any personal experience with it, not even secondhand, by knowing somebody else, but I've heard that this is similar to how James Patterson comes up with story ideas, chooses a co-writer, and then kind of downloads his idea to them. They write some chapters. He makes sure that they're on the same mental page, that he is. And then apparently the co-writer does quite a bit, maybe most of, maybe almost all of, in some cases, the writing. But
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So how does it feel? What's it like?
It's a little weird still, we're doing all the marketing stuff, and I'm doing all the marketing for him, but some people are still asking for Mike's input and stuff, but it's all on me. I still talk to him a lot in email. I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? Are you okay with this? And so he's still involved, just more in the background on this particular book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it works well because we get along really, really well. There's a lot of respect there on both sides. So, and I let him kind of, if he has an opinion on something, it's really his series to begin with. So, and then they're his characters. So I'll defer to him on a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really ask me to defer to him very much. So it works.
Wow. That is, so it sounds like both of you have really tried to, what I was about ready to say sounds so ridiculous, but really tried to make it work. But it's true. Sometimes I feel like things are not working because nobody's really willing to go further towards the middle, to meet in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But you defer to the fact that it's his book series and his baby, and he defers to the fact that you're a good writer and you've been doing good writing.
Mm-hmm. It's basically, it feels like, the last 75,000 words of the book is kind of more me, but I just used his characters and made sure that I honored those characters, and it worked.
Oh, Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think that you two might ever work on a project together, which would probably be weird and different because then it would be your joint ideas. But what do
Yeah,
you think about
that would be
co-writing?
different.
Yeah.
I'd never thought about it before, but if it was somebody like Mike, I would consider it. If he came to me and he really wanted to do something, had an idea, then I would consider it, definitely. I would
Yeah.
probably do it if it
Yeah.
was Mike.
I guess that's kind of how the best relationships would work, is that somebody calls somebody that they already know, like, and trust,
Hmm.
and then they have a discussion and they see whether or not it'll work. And then it seems to, a lot of the stories that I hear seem to be pretty positive.
Hmm. I think you just have to make sure you have the right partner. You're on the same page. Our writing style is very similar,
That's
so it
probably a
works.
big help. Yeah.
Because I worked really hard to make sure that the first 20,000 words didn't sound different than the last 75,000 words.
Yeah.
No,
Or
I had
from the
to,
first two books, right?
yeah, exactly. So I really focused on, I naturally kind of sound like him anyway, but I tend to use more metaphors and similes, especially similes. So and he doesn't, he has a different creative way of, so I had to kind of add that in, but otherwise that was about it. We're pretty similar otherwise. And I had
Nice.
to work on writing the Samuel character. He's a little different than what I'm used to writing, but once I got a hold of him, oh, he was so much fun. So much fun.
Nice. So now this is the third and final book in the series, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So I'm happy that I still have two books to go, but there's only two more books to go. I really liked that book number one.
It was good.
Yeah. So okay. So your co-writing situation is just different enough that I'm like, okay, well, that kind of avoids some of the questions that I was going to ask you. But but based on the experience that you do have, what would you say are some uh, takeaways for the listening audience in what they could look for when they're trying to decide whether or not they should do writing with someone else? How, do you think it would work less well if you guys were like best friends or total strangers? Or like, do you have any takeaways or ideas that you can share?
I think if you're thinking about it, I think you need to find somebody whose writing style is already not too far from yours and you're both willing to bend. And I think you should agree on the general outline before you even start, just to make sure,
Right.
make sure you both agree with the general direction. And I know a lot of people are pantser writers where they just fly by the seat of their pants. I don't think you can do that. And in partnership, I think you're going to have an outline and agree to it ahead of time.
That makes sense. I was thinking in my head, would it even work? I don't think it would work between a plotter and a pantser, but I'm like, would two pantsers be able to do it? I guess they would find out at the end whether or not they
I
were able to
guess
do
it would
it.
be a little messy at first. There'd be a whole lot of editing, but
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess, yeah. So if you don't mind trying something out that may not work.
yeah. And I think you have to find somebody that, who, why are you going to do it? Do they really bring something to the project?
Yeah.
In our situation, it was more like Mike needed to finish the book. He just, for personal reason, it was just really hard for him to do. So finally, he's like, you know what? I got to bring somebody else in.
Yeah.
So our situation was very different, but
Yeah. But now it's an idea in your writing toolbox that isn't necessarily a closed door anymore.
exactly, which is nice. That's always good to grow.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So in your under your other pen name, and it's totally fine with me whether you want to say it or not, say however much you want to say. But in your other pen name, do you also write in series or standalones or a little of both?
I do everything. The other pen name is MSK, Kaye. Um, so I have 11 books. I don't know, I have to count, something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
totally
those are with
understand.
and those are with independent publishers. I have some series, I have some standalone, I have some semi-connected books, kind of like this series with Mike, where it's like the same character but completely different story.
Yeah.
I have some like that as well. So all over the place.
Nice. So what are your thoughts on writing a series? I personally love series. I love reading them. I love writing them, partially because sometimes I feel like I've put so many years of love and effort into these characters that they better last, because I don't want it to be like, with my husband's job that we did a lot of move someplace else, move someplace else. And I have a lot of friends, which is great, but I've left a lot of friends, which is terrible. And I think that somewhere along the way, I just decided I wasn't going to do that with my characters. These friends are staying with me. So how do you look at series, writing them, plotting them, especially now that you've seen another way of doing it, whatever it is that you and Mike did? It's probably at least a little bit different from the way that you would normally do it. So what do you think about that?
I think it just depends on, I usually know when I'm probably like halfway through a book if I think it's going to be a series or not. I think it has to do with, I sit down and do all this brainstorming, right? And it depends on how much stuff comes out of my head. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that happened with my first book, where that one was a mess at first, but it's now it's my favorite book now. Besides Mike's, of course.
Also your other favorite book.
Yeah, my other favorite. But yeah, that one was, it just, every time I did an outline, I'm like, oh, this would be interesting. Well, what if this happened in the past, or this or that? And I just fell in love with the characters, like you said. And that one just kind of tumbled into 4 books, with one of them being a prequel. So
wow. Well done. Now, so your writing style is similar. So is the kind of writing also similar? Do you write suspense, or suspense with other elements?
In my other books that are not Christian books, which is the reason for the different pen names, all of them have some kind of suspense. I don't know how to write without suspense.
Yeah.
I think I would get too bored. But they're usually probably more romantic suspense than just straight suspense. I have some of the books have some paranormal in them as well. So that's usually where I'm at. Romantic suspense, maybe some paranormal dropped in, just depending on the series.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about suspense, definitely for me as a reader, I want to feel like I really need to go to bed, but I can't stop here.
Exactly. Yes.
So pacing is such a big part of the story, and yet I think that one of the things that you said in your press release was that you have to balance that suspense requires a fast pace with also the reader's ability to connect well enough with the character to want to keep reading and see what happens. Mm-hmm. How do you work that?
Well, this book was a little different because, the most of the characters you'd already grown to love through all the books. So I didn't have to build, Trudy. Like, she's probably, I think, the cornerstone character of the whole series. We already know her. We already love her. She's already kicked butt. We adore her already. Yeah. So you just have to show her a little bit and just show that little spunk of Trudy, and you just get that every once in a while, and you just love her. Dream, we had to build him a little bit since he's new to the series. There's a chapter at the beginning that Mike wrote where it's Dream in a hotel room and he's waiting to go do this thing that he has to go do, and it's just all in his head. And you wouldn't think that would be very interesting because that's one of the rules, right? You have to either have dialogue or action. But no, it's just a guy sitting alone in a hotel room. And it's one of the most interesting chapters I've ever read. And it was great because you got to really know Dream and think, okay, is this guy crazy or is he not crazy? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Wow. Do you think that that reading, and because you weren't just a reader, you had to really study what Mike had done in that chapter so that you could make the whole rest of the book seem seamless? Mm-hmm. Do you think that you learned some things about how somebody else did it differently by the fact that you were actually studying it, not just reading it?
Probably, yeah. I had to really kind of get into Mike's head as far as what direction he was going with each character, which I got to ask him a lot, and he was very, very available the whole time. So I could ask him any stupid question I had. But yeah, when I was reading, especially the first 20,000 that he'd already written of this particular book, yeah, I read them very carefully, took a lot of notes to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yes, Dream's hair is black. No, wait, it's blonde.
Yeah, very important.
But and then the rest of the book was very suspense filled, especially once you get about halfway through and you kind of already know the characters and you kind of get the relationships and you can just show the little pieces of the relationships as you're going, and then it's the rest of the book is kind of breathless. It's
Wow.
just go, 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 go.
You know, no, most people will listen to this on their podcast app. Some people will be watching it on the YouTube channel, but I'm just looking at your face every time you answer a question that has to do with the writing, and you just seem like totally engaged and like, this was great, and I loved writing it and being a part of the project. So it gets me excited as a reader too, that like, wow, the author's so excited about this book. I mean, of course I'm going to read it because I already told you why, but that sort of thing, you know, it makes me even more interested.
Yeah, definitely.
Now,
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I keep interrupting you. I just get so excited talking about books. So, so what I was wondering was, this book, correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully I've got this right, comes out on June 2nd.
Mhm.
Okay. So by the time this goes live as a podcast episode, congratulations, your book is out.
Yay!
Yay! So you've probably had at least several months since you stopped doing any edits or, you know, like really
Right.
be done with the book. So have you started something else? And do you think that writing this book has changed your writing and tweaked it at all? The reason I ask is because I notice that in my own writing. Even when I'm going from my own series to my own series, I'm like, oh, you know what though? I did this in the last book and I really liked the way I did that. So like, I think it's how I sort of grow as a writer. I'm always finding things get a little different and often that way a little better. So what do you think now that you've finished this book? What do you think has changed, if anything, in your latest?
Well, I'm actually 2 books away from this book.
2.
I wrote another book for Revel, the same publisher, and it's another Christian, but it's going to be Christian romantic suspense. It's already written, and I'm just waiting on the edits to come back. So really excited about that. That's going to come out next summer.
Okay, so 2021.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm actually just starting to work on the title, because we have a working title, we don't have, you know, the title, and we're starting to work on all that stuff. So I'm really excited.
Yay.
But that one, what I learned from the Dream book is how to really write Christian fiction. I mean, I am Christian, so I mean, but as far as the kind of rules for Christian fiction, like obviously you can't use profanity, you can't have, you know, you can't love scenes and stuff like that, but I took the word crap got taken out of one of the books, and I'm like, oh, I can't even put that in there. Okay. Yeah. So that was a little different. I mean, it's not too bad. And I took cues from Mike, because sometimes you need a character to curse. Sometimes you have, you know, this bad, nasty guy, and you punch him in the face, you know, he's not going to say something. Oh, yeah, that hurt, you know. Yeah. he's not going to be a nice guy. So what Mike put in there is he just said, you know, John cursed, and I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, because you know, he can curse without actually saying the word, which would be inappropriate in this genre. So yeah, I learned a lot of that from Mike. I learned a lot from the editors at Revel, which are awesome. And then when I went to go from Dream to my next book, which is about a female sniper, it took me a little bit to kind of get out of the Mike writing mode and back into the romance writing mode, because Mike doesn't do romance, and the way that the other books, the Dream books, are set up, there's no romance. Like some people want Trudy and Samuel to get together. Not gonna happen. Not with what he did. So I had to kind of get going again on that. So that was different.
Yeah. It's almost like, I mean, it's like you're writing in your own voice, but still it was flavored in another way. Now you have to get back to, no, really just my own voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the style is there, but yeah, the taking romance out and then putting it back in, it took me a minute because, you know, romance is, the way I write it, it's very, very subtle.
Right. And starts kind of from the beginning and goes through the end. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Very nice. Okay. That sounds really interesting. So, so not only have you got 2 books, not the last 2, but the 2 ago and 3 ago. Those two are written for a Christian publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got one where you mix a voice with another author's voice, and it was in Christian fiction. And then you've got one that's just your voice, still
Mm-hmm.
Christian fiction,
Mm-hmm.
just a slight tweak in as much as it's romantic suspense, not straight suspense. But now you're also still writing under your other name, which is just mainstream and
mainstream. Yep.
some romantic suspense, some with paranormal, some with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like maybe you're the one who has like too many voices in your head?
My husband says I have too many voices in my head. He might be right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of all over the place. I think there are a lot of writers who kind of strictly do just this one genre. I'm kind of all over the place. You'll have certain elements that are probably always going to be there. There's going to be at least one fight scene in all of my books.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise I vary a lot. So yeah, the book I'm writing right now, I mean, it could be Christian. I'm not 100% yet, but because I don't have a publisher for it, I'm just writing it because I'm always writing something.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Wow. Oh, I like the way you do it. I like the way also that you're just like, I'm fine. I'm just writing something. I don't need to be under contract. I just love to write, and eventually it'll find its place.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I have an independent publisher that I work with for my other books, and she'll take most of what I give her. I think she likes my particular style, so I've always got a home there.
Nice. And wow, it's almost like you have you can't call either one of them a vacation home, but I was going to say it's almost like you have 2 homes now.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about the pen name. It seems to me, based on, all the other writers that I've talked to who use more than one name, and it's the reason why I have a name on hold. I have a domain name that I've been paying for every year for probably, holy cow, if this is 2020, I might have been paying for that domain name for almost 20 years by now. Because when I first started, the very first writers conference I ever went to was a Christian one. And the first writers that I really knew, first I knew a bunch of Christian writers, and then I joined RWA. So I knew pretty much only romance writers. Mm-hmm. And so, at first it was just a matter of writing what I knew about at the moment. But similar to you, like I would get these notes back from an editor. Did you know that you can't say gosh, darn, golly like that in a Christian book? I'm like, you're kidding. I'm like, well, that's what my mom told me to say, so I didn't say the other words. And I have books that are like full of, crap and darn it, mm-hmm. And, but so it was hard for me to kind of figure out, okay, in my real life, I say these things, but in this publisher, I would say these things. And in that publisher, you can say those things, some of which I would never say, But some genres really do want a certain thing. And if they even know about other books that you've written in other genres that aren't like the ones that they like, they just don't want to know. They basically just don't want to know about them. They don't want to be confused, which I totally get, because as much as I adore Amanda Quick and have read at least 20 of her books, I just cannot get into a Jane Ann Krentz book. Ding, ding, ding. Same woman. So I'm so glad, that she split them up. Because if I had to be constantly trying to figure out, is this one of the Jane Ann Krentz books that I like or don't like? Like, I can't remember. That would be hard. But on the other hand, managing multiple pen names with websites and social media, this is a long-winded question. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yes, on everything you just said. So the reason for the separate pen name is really because it's Christian. And I want, if it's a Christian reader, I want them to be able to look up that pen name and be like, okay, it's Christian, it's safe, it's clean. Because I'm the same way. I read almost exclusively Christian fiction or like young adult, because I like reading clean books. I don't always write clean books, but I like reading clean books. So I like to be able to count on, I go to this author and it's going to be clean. So that's why the 2 separate pen names. What's the rest of the question?
How hard is it to create 2 different
managing
presences?
I have 2 separate websites. I'm still building the one for Christian fiction, but the other one is built. So yeah, I have to manage 2 different websites, have to pay for different websites, and then I created more social media presence and with the other pen name. So yeah, I had to rebuild everything, and I'm still trying to rebuild everything. Got MSK up to like 4,000 people on Twitter and like however many hundreds of followers on Facebook, and now I have to start all over with the new name, but it's not too bad. And like I said, it's nicer for the readers to know, oh, this person recommends this. Oh, it's probably, so I understand that. Like I said, I don't read erotica. I don't write erotica either, but I don't want to accidentally stumble into that.
Right. Yeah. With somebody who's using the same name and just decided to take one series in a different direction.
Exactly. And I don't write that extreme, but that my other books aren't, I like to say they're not as polite.
Nice. I like that.
There's cursing and there's a little bit more kissing.
Yeah.
And I just don't want somebody to start reading and be offended.
Right.
That's the last thing I want.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think one of the best things about reading your 1-star reviews is to see whether or not there's anything that people wanted that you just didn't know they wanted. Mm-hmm. So my first book was a chick lit that was just kind of somebody like me. She's a Christian, but I didn't make it into a Christian book. And she says, I never can decide on my podcast, which I try to keep G-rated, like, should I say it? So since the kids might be home and listening more often now, I won't say it. But I said the words that we say instead of the really bad words. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't consider them swear words, but they aren't the clean words, like what you were saying. Mm-hmm. And some of the 1-star reviews were like, I loved this book except for but it's funny, they give you 1 star, I love this book except for that she swore all the time and she was making out too much with the guy. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that you wanted something that was like that. So I created a whole nother series that is totally the clean and wholesome kind of thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's nothing going on except for kissing and wanting to, they want to do more things, but they don't do it. So I figured that's realistic. I can't make it look like they don't even want to do things. I'm like, that's not realistic.
No. Is he really male?
Yeah, that's right. Is she not like being clear that like, I like you, and if you asked me out on a date, I would say yes. But so from a business and marketing perspective, do you find that now you have to give a little bit more time or somehow plan more time because now you have 2 names that you need to manage?
Yeah. Every time I get on Facebook, it's go to this page and go to this page and, it takes a little bit longer, but it's not too bad, I guess.
So tips for reader or listeners, might be that just keep in mind, if you go with 2 pen names, like there are the pros and the cons. Mm-hmm. It's going to separate possibly in a good way. Yeah. It's going to take more time.
I think only do it if you have something, if you're writing Christian and then not Christian, that's a pretty big distinction. But with my other pen name, I write romantic suspense. I have a little bit of like young adult, but like older young adult, not super clean. Like probably 17, 18-year-olds, that kind of, or maybe new adult would probably be the more accurate term. But they're all a little different. There's some romantic suspense, there's some just romance, there's some paranormal. So I wouldn't make those pen names different because I think the same reader would probably enjoy most of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was important to separate out the Christian.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it for anything more extreme, less extreme than that. I think.
Yeah. Now, do you do any like speaking at conferences or teaching writing at all at a workshop or?
I'm involved with the Florida Writers Association, and was the co-leader of a group for a while, and then I just got too busy. Right. But I have been the speaker at several little group talks, but nothing huge. No.
Yeah. I was just wondering, what kinds of advice do you offer to other writers that you're around?
I have actually written a few blog posts, and I pulled them up. So I have one where it's just places to find your fiction, like your fiction ideas. So I have, history. I love pulling out of history. The book that's going to come out next year, I'm pulling from some history and some actual, some history. I don't want to give too much away, but
yeah, don't do that.
Mythology and fairy tales. I have some books in my other pen name where it's actually the Sumerian water and sky god myth that comes to life in a modern high school. So that was kind of fun. I was just reading a mythology book and I'm like, this is kind of obscure, and that's what I like, something a little bit more obscure, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Movies, I don't mean, steal the ideas. I just mean, sometimes there's like a little tiny bit that you can take and just like blow up, into something completely unique. Dreams, I know it sounds corny, but sometimes you get a little tidbit in there and you're like, that was really interesting. I have no idea where that came from. Maybe I'm a sociopath, but it was interesting.
Yeah. Or something that just doesn't leave your mind. Like I had a dream this morning when I woke up, and it's 4:00 in the afternoon, and I still think of this one particular scene, and I think there's a part of my brain that's trying to figure out, what could I do with that? Where could I put that?
Exactly. And I think probably because we're writers and our mind works in that way, we probably get more weird and interesting dreams, I'm thinking, because our minds are already going that way. And then, of course, literature, which obviously Dream Within a Dream, all from literature.
Yeah.
And I like how the stories are built, because he didn't just like make it, okay, it's just the story in modern times. It's completely different, but still kind of connected. Like I love how A Dream Within a Dream, it's a dude named Dream. I mean, who saw that coming, And it all makes sense. When you get through the book, you're like, oh, I understand that title.
Oh, cool.
And the same with the other ones.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say I like having the little bit of Edgar Allan Poe poetry, kind of at the beginning. And you're like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play out. You read the poem and you're like, obviously they feel like this has something to do with the story. So then my mind is already like, okay, I'm waiting to see.
Well, the poem is very, very important to the story.
Oh.
There's a map in there, we'll say that. It's really
interesting.
Yeah. And there's some connection to American history as well. They end up in Boston. So all of that's going to ties together, and it's cool.
All right. I can't remember where Poe is from himself. Can you tell me, or do you know? Yeah.
I don't know.
Because when you said Boston, I was like, is he from Boston? And then I was like, is he from England? There's a certain amount of, there's like a group of people that were writing in a similar time that I probably took a class where I studied all of them at the same time, which kind of jumbled them together in my head, where I'm like, wait a minute. No, Samuel Coleridge was American and Charles Dickens was, English.
Yeah. And then some other ideas, just some things that I've written in the past is pay attention to the white space on the page. Because when people pick up a book, especially if it's in the bookstore, and they flip through it, if it's just solid type, sometimes they're like, that sounds too hard. Even if they're not like consciously thinking, I want more white space, it just feels like it feels like a textbook,
Yeah.
So be cognizant of that, with your paragraphing. And then sometimes you can use it to make the feel of time passing. Like if you put this next thing on the next line, you feel like there's a pause without having to say there's a pause.
Yeah.
Or as far as you can make it one line have a stronger impact. So sometimes I'll just be going along and just have one sentence by itself or just one word by itself, and it has more impact that way. So, and it's another way to have a little bit of more white space on the page.
Yeah, I like that one myself.
Yeah.
It keeps me from using the exclamation points, which my editor, at some point, we had this big battle early on, and I was like, but listen to me talk. Do I sound like someone who doesn't write and talk with exclamation points? No, I do not. And then she was like, what if I tell you can use as many exclamation points as you want in email and all other correspondence, but not in your novels? I'm like, okay, that's fair. So then I was like, all right, I can't use an exclamation point. How about the sentence sitting by itself? I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually have the opposite. I tend not to have exclamation points in there at all. So that's probably why I figured out other ways to bring it to attention.
Yeah.
And I actually have had editors put exclamation points in.
What?
So, yeah.
That's crazy. Mind blown. What? Wow.
I'm like, there's certain things that I just don't do. I don't like exclamation points, and I don't like split infinitives, and I don't like, yeah, and I don't like the word suddenly. I had a critique group for a while, and I was famous for, if you use the word suddenly, I'm going to tell you need to take it out.
Yeah.
You need to show. Because I feel like that's a tell word, and I want to push you and show how it was suddenly. Because you're going to feel it better if you feel it on the page. And that's another way to use paragraphing and white space to show sudden.
That's right.
And then another thing I like to share with people is all the different writing books. Is, like I said, I have zero natural writing talent, but I learn really well. That's my one talent, is I learn well. I have no natural talent in almost anything else. But so I've read, at least 100 writing books. So one of my favorites is, of course, The Elements of Style. You have to read that. That's like the mini Bible.
Yeah.
For writing. Self-Editing for Fiction Writers by Brown and King.
I love that
one.
Read
that
too.
one. Yeah, I like that one. Word painting. That one's good for imagery if you want to add a little bit more creativity to the book. Stein on writing. I love Stein. Soul Stein. Yeah. I love it's all on craft, but he gets more in depth.
Okay.
Like little things like don't use the word that. You can take that out like 90% of the time, and it just streamlines and keeps it tighter.
I have that book on my shelf, and I still haven't read it because I found it at either like a library sale or a garage sale. So now I'm like, okay, go pull that off the shelf and
yeah, I like that. It's one of my favorites. And then Spunk and Bite. I don't know if you've heard of that one. So it's it's a play on the Elements of Style by Strunk and White, but this book is called Spunk and Bite. It's basically when to break the rules. So I always tell everybody, read all the other ones first, make sure you understand what the rules are, and then this will tell you when it's okay to break them.
Nice.
And then, of course, can't not mention this one. It's one of my favorites, 77 Reasons Why Your Book Was Rejected by Mike Nappa.
Oh, of course. Who was your agent and is now your co-writer.
Exactly. So,
a must read.
So when I first signed with him as my agent, I was looked up everything about him, and I read that book, and I made notes and made marked pages, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do exactly everything correctly. Well, I'm not going to do anything that he says in that book, and I'm going to do everything else.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, that's a good list. Very eclectic too.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Wow, this has been so interesting, and we have covered the gamut of from beginning to end, and balancing what tends to be, in my mind, multiple careers, and we've talked about the business side. So well done. If you're going to listen to one episode this year, it should be this one. Awesome. Melissa, thank you so much. This was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is my first, live interview, so yay. Thank you for taking a chance on me.
Absolutely. Well, and you've got such an engaging smile and laugh that it's fun to talk to you. Now, for all the people who are like, okay, must check these books out, where can people find you and your books?
Well, I have some social media, but it's under the name Melissa Koslin, Koslin. That's where I'm really promoting this particular book. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And then it's going to be on all major retailers. And right now you can find it on bakerpublishinggroup.com. So that's the publishers. And it is available, well, it's going to be out when this comes out, but it's available for pre-order, and it'll be available for sale, Amazon and all the big majors.
Excellent. So. Great. Oh, I hope that it's a fabulous success. I don't see how it can't be. I mean, the other books, the last book of a series to me is like, oh, this is the one I've been waiting for, because now we're going to find out, the end of everything wrapping up.
Well, it's a pretty big end, so I hope you like it.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait so much. As soon as I realized, so this is kind of silly, but this is the reader in me. As soon as I realized that this was in the series of this book that I don't think that I even realized that it was book one of a series, or I would have probably been watching out for it. But like I went to Amazon and hit follow for the authors. I went to BookBub and hit follow for the authors. I'm like, I want to know everything about what's going on with these books now.
Good.
Oh, nice. Well done. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you for having me.